destroy New York City and cost $12 billion over the next 3 years. This past weekend, Mayor Adams ordered all city agencies to slash their budgets by 15% just to compensate for the increased costs.
While I have instructed my team to work closely with city agencies to reduce the impact that these cuts may have on New Yorkers who rely on our services, the simple truth is that longtime New Yorkers and asylum seekers will feel these potential cuts, and they will hurt.
That's not good. The mayor says the cuts won't happen at once, but the first 5% will come in November. Joining us right now with more on the migrant crisis and the impact it's having on New Yorkers, City Council Minority Leader Joseph Borelli. Nice to have you back.
Good morning, guys.
So what did you think about the mayor calling for cuts? Because we just had the city controller on, and he says the mayor's scapegoating the migrants on this. Is the mayor scapegoating the migrants on our budget?
So it's bizarre to hear the comptroller worried about who's to blame when we have a massive budget gap. But I actually brought some visual aids to explain the budget because I saw one of my colleagues on here last week, and she seemed to have a little bit a misunderstanding of how the budget works. The budget has to be balanced, so we have 10 golf balls that fit right inside the vase, the golf balls of the money. If we put 3 or 4 golf balls in this jar, we don't have a balanced budget. And this gap is the problem that Mayor Adams is talking about. For some of my colleagues, they don't believe this is real. So even if the state gives us one little golf ball back, these are real problems. These are services. These are police department, sanitation department, education, all of the stuff and all the services that our neighbors rely on, all the nonprofits that provide critical functions in different neighborhoods. All that is in jeopardy, and that's why the mayor is forced to make these cuts. And these are real cuts. These are not just, fake shavings at the top.
Okay, so the city controller says, listen, we've had budget problems before the migrants got here. But of course, the migrants are draining the system now and straining our resources. We've heard it from everybody in the city, including some of the charitable organizations that are trying to pick up, some of the slack there. But I mean, what can we do to avoid, people who work hard, who pay their taxes in New York City? What can we do to make them happy to stay here?
Look, well, probably a lot of things, but number one is to take care of this budget crisis. The comptroller tried to say that we had existing gaps in the budget, and that's true, but those were gaps that were planned and deliberated and vetted between the council and the mayor. They were something we knew about and we know about going into the next 3 or 4 or 5 fiscal years. This is new spending with no end in sight. And frankly, if we don't close the border, that gap is only going to grow. So when we talk about, hey, we need to get the federal government to pay, if the federal government just gives us a blanket, $2 billion check one day without closing the border, that $2 billion is going to get spent pretty quick. And at some point, we're not a municipal corporation. We're a nonprofit doing the federal government's refugee business.
Let me ask you a question, though, because the rhetoric about this seems to be in question and it gets heated on social media. When you explain what you're doing with the budget right now and that it may cut city services, is that somewhat of a right-wing troll talk? Is that xenophobic? Because some people say that.
No, actually, we were dismissed for warning the mayor about a year ago, saying that, hey, this is what's going to happen unless you do it. Suddenly, 12 months later, when the actual crisis comes, right, again, we don't have this. We have this. Right? That has happened, and now suddenly the mayor himself is suddenly called racist and xenophobic for just talking about the basic truth that cities like New York have to have a balanced budget. The money we raise has to be equal to the money we spend. We don't have an option B. And our only options for making that up are the cuts, which are going to be a problem, or to raise taxes. And that's not a good option either. The only tax we have the even option and ability to raise is the property tax. Property tax is about a third of our budget. If we have to make up 15% of the revenue from an area of the budget that only accounts for a third of the revenue generating, now you're talking about the most massive property tax increase in the history of New York. Frankly.
Is it possible to find inefficiencies in some of these budgets to make up for that $12 billion need?
Yeah, and we did that last year. We talked about a 3% peg cut to some of the agencies. That is trimming the fat. That's a good thing that cities should do, every now and then.
But it's not possible without
it. The city should trim some fat.
But it's not possible without the mayor saying it's going to hurt some people, correct?
It's not possible because the depth of this cut, 5% by November, another 10% 3 months later, another 15% by the end of the year, that is real service delivery cuts. That's when we talk about libraries being shuttered for several days a week, maybe sanitation going to one pickup a week. Things like that are really the crux of the service delivered by the city of New York. That is in jeopardy because of this. So I'm sick of hearing my colleagues or the comptroller or whoever, they sound like that woman on the airplane saying that this mother, you know what, is not real. That's what they sound like. And it really is real. And the golf ball.
So, Joe, let me ask you what's going on in Staten Island, because you're from Staten Island. As you know, there was a school that was turned into a migrant shelter. People in the area not happy, lots of protests. Now there's big sound system going on, warning them that I don't know if it's real or imagined problems inside that shelter. How is this going to end?
It's not going to end well, right? I mean, homeless shelters were always controversial, always. We always fought about them. We always deliberated them. Now we have 206 or so that were just put in the middle of residential neighborhoods with no public input, no conversation, and no ifs, ands, or buts. You're just getting it.
Are the people in that neighborhood overreacting?
No, because this is a site that is adjacent to a K-8 school, an all-girls high school, and a special needs school. It's right across the street. This was a building that we fought to save to be a school, and now suddenly the city has decided, because of this crisis, we're going to turn it into a homeless shelter. We have a guy who lives right next door who just backs up on showers that are now just temporary showers in his backyard where people are showering every day.
Before you go, I know the response, the answer to the solution was to provide work authorization to get them to work. They don't want to be in shelters. They need an income. Is that not the fixable solution there?
It is a solution, but they need to qualify for asylum. The rate of asylum granting from, say, Ukraine is like 50%, and they're at war. The asylum rate that it gets granted from Mexico is like 98% rejected. So it's almost impossible to get these claims. We're pushing these claims out into 2035, 2033. The judges are probably in law school right now that are going to hear that case. The attorneys in that case are probably at Little League practice tonight. That's how far in the future we're talking.
Oh, goodness. Well, listen, the city controller thinks there's plenty of people who are coming in through the southern border who were nurses who could really help in our city when we have a city of unemployment of over 2 million people who don't want to work, right?
Look, Republicans, the House passed a border security and immigration bill. That includes work-sponsored visas. You're a hospital, you want workers. You're an engineering firm, you want engineers. You can do that under the Republican plan. The people who didn't do anything, by the way, is the Senate. Chuck Schumer has not acted on this issue at all.
Where is Chuck? Chuck has been saying that he's working behind the scenes.
He's working behind the scenes because, in my estimation, he doesn't have the votes in the Senate. They're worried about 2024. They're worried about people like John Tester in Montana. They're worried about Sherrod Brown in Ohio. These people can't take a vote on a blanket amnesty bill and a bailout for sanctuary cities. They'll lose their race, and Schumer loses the Senate.
Joe Borelli, holding down the fort on Staten Island in New York City.
And we love your visual explanation as
Thank
well.
you. And they got my face on them,
to
too, which I
simplify
have.
that.
I have the gifts.
Being able to take one of those golf balls to the course,
All
right?